Hello BookTube, Books with Banks back again with another video. Today I'm going to go through and rank all 8 seasons of the HBO Game of Thrones show, and I'll also throw in the one season we have just finished up of House of the Dragon. These are of course the shows based on the fantasy work and worlds of George R.R. Martin in his A Song of Ice and Fire series. I currently only have one other video on my channel out about this famous series, so if you're curious about that video or interested in checking out any of my other content, please look through what else I have to offer on all of my playlists over there. I will give a light spoiler warning for the 8-season run of Game of Thrones, and I by no means will be spoiling anything whatsoever from the one season we have now of House of the Dragon, as a big part of this is I kind of want to give people who might be a fan of certain elements of the show kind of an indication of where or how I think the new series compares. All that said, let's get into it. In ninth place, I'm going to put Game of Thrones Season 8, and that should not be too surprising to anyone. I have the final season of Game of Thrones ranked at the bottom here. It's just a shame that it's all so rushed, and it all seems to focus so much on action and fan service, and giving these big satisfying moments of like weird trope subversion and excitement and last-minute betrayals, but really I think what they wound up doing was sacrificing a lot of really logical character work and development, and they replaced all of that with these really two kind of clunky climactic action scenes. I really did like episode 2 of the season, of everyone sort of converging in Winterfell before a big battle. That calm before the storm and those really solid character moments are still there, but unfortunately, when you only have one episode in the whole season that still manages to deliver on the things I love about the show, that season has to come at the bottom for me. Then in 8th place, I'm going to say Game of Thrones Season 7. Again, probably not too surprising. This is just the slightly longer, slightly more well-thought-out season than 8, but Season 7 still suffers from a lot of what made Season 8 clunky and kind of illogical. This is, or I guess the epitome of my problems with this season. It's all in that penultimate episode in which, like, a band of these, randomly collected fan favorite kind of characters, they're trekking into the far north. They give us these sort of kind of Marvel superhero style action scenes, but there's no real heart or much logic or engaging TV in it. And here and in Season 8, I already didn't really like how the show had changed Euron Greyjoy's character from the books, but these last 2 seasons really laid it on thick. They just made him into too much of this kind of crass and generic villain. Also, these seasons continue to really shortchange the brilliant Dornish characters and storyline and setting from the books that started this kind of changing and kind of destroying everything great about the Dornish stuff. That all started back in Season 5, but Season 7 and Season 8 continued that. Speaking of Season 5, though, in 7th place, I'm going to say Game of Thrones Season 5. And this is where bizarre, kind of seemingly unnecessary changes from the source material, I think really started to hurt the show instead of help it. For a quick sort of counterexample, remember how good those show-specific, like Littlefinger Varys conversations were in the first few seasons? Yeah, there's no productive additions or changes like that anymore. Everything that's altered or added just really kind of felt like a distraction or something that limited or that kept people watching the show from enjoying it as much as people who were reading the books. All that said, there is a massive step up in quality between like my putting Season 7 in 8th place and Season 5th in 7th place. I think Season 5 is a lot better than Season 7. I actually thought they handled the dark and twisted Stannis storyline very well. I thought they made a lot of the Jon stuff more compelling in the show than it was in the 5th book. I also found myself enjoying the Tyrion and Jorah stuff, even though I didn't like it as much as I liked it in the book. I still liked it in the show, but they really shot themselves in the foot, I think, by not giving the Dornish characters their due, and in fact by cutting out like people like Ariana and Quentin, two of the most interesting characters from that Dornish setting, and I'm not sure what they were thinking or what the process was in getting rid of them. All that said, I do think they adapted one of, if not my favorite storyline from the books pretty well here in season 5, and that being the storyline, everything with the High Sparrow and Cersei versus Marjorie. Great stuff there, I thought. Coming in at 6th place, I'm going to say Game of Thrones Season 3. Getting it out of the way, first off, 2 things this season does very well are everything about Episode 9 and even Episode 10 with the fallout from that devastating Episode 9. All so well done. If you know the scene and the episodes that I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. Also, I think they do the Jon and Ygritte relationship very, very well. And the Jaime and Brienne stuff starts out good too, but I actually do kind of find myself losing a little interest in it, or in their dynamic after that kind of famous bath scene, where you can really see, Brienne connecting with Jaime. It's a great scene, but everything comes afterwards feels a little bit like an afterthought to just running them through their paces across the geography, getting them back to King's Landing. Also, I'll say splitting up Book 3 also meant that this season had a lot of the slower build-up from that book, so that just means we get a lot of Bran and Jojen in the woods, and a lot of sitting around in King's Landing, kind of just waiting for these kind of famous and infamous weddings to happen. Then, in 5th place, I'm going to put Game of Thrones Season 6. I have a feeling that it won't be too popular that I rank this one so low. Granted, I think it is fitting that it ranks kind of right in the middle, at least as far as my tastes go. Of course, things like Battle of the Bastards and everything with the Sept of Baelor, Cersei, Tommen in that last episode, all of that is a ton of fun, very well shot, very well performed, but it's also not exactly why I got into the show. Honestly, I'm not the biggest Jon fan either, so I'm not so much a fan of how he's basically elevated to kind of hero, almost Christ-like hero status in this season. This is also where the Euron stuff started out that I really just didn't like through the end of the show. All that said, I enjoyed the forward momentum of this season. I enjoyed getting an interpretation of events for the first time now, really, that weren't directly from the books, as they get caught up to what was published now. But these were instead just adaptations of the vague ideas and roadmap the showrunners had to go off of for where they knew the show would eventually wind up, or some ideas of where they knew it would wind up. I also enjoyed Bran's storyline here for the first time in a long time, maybe ever. One more gripe though, as cool as the Sept of Baelor thing is, how exciting that is at the beginning of the last episode, it's so many characters all in one place, and I kind of just felt like the writers were getting rid of and kind of dealing with a lot of loose ends and storylines they just didn't want to deal with, and I really wish some of those characters had gotten more interesting and something to deliver kind of a better conclusion to their character arcs, instead of all just kind of being put into one unfortunate situation. Yeah. Then in 4th place, I'm going to say Game of Thrones Season 4. It's really close between this one and the next one. On any other day, these two really, I think, could kind of bounce back and forth, my 4th and 3rd place. But right now, I'm going to say 4th place is Season 4. For now. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of a ton of action in my Game of Thrones show, or like whenever I'm in this world, and this season is full of action. I started to get a little annoyed with Arya here. I wish they actually explored her trauma and kind of her violent reaction to her trauma more than just, oh wow, cool, yay, let's just turn the young girl into a badass. Enough said, fans will love it. I always felt like they could do a lot more with her than what they wound up doing in the show. I also felt like this is where the narrative really starts to lean into making characters like Dany, Tyrion, and Jon more the traditional fantasy kind of hero trope sort of characters of the series, and that's just something I never really cared much for with Game of Thrones. All the negative aside though, wow, Season 4 really is fantastic. It's full of exceptional moments. Everything from the Joffrey-Marjorie wedding, everything with Lysa Arryn at the Eyrie, of course the trial by combat, the regular trial, for that matter before the trial by combat, the Episode 9 Battle at the Wall. All great, excellent, thrilling TV, fantastic performances by the main cast too. Then in third place, this I think is where I'm going to put House of the Dragon Season 1. This newest season of television we've kind of gotten in this world, I mean, just wow, they really had a ton of work to do to get fans back into the show, and back into this universe after the kind of controversial and disappointing last couple seasons of Game of Thrones. But honestly, I really think they did an outstanding job. I think it was a total success. The source material for this season, it's arguably more difficult to grapple with and adapt, but still they managed to convey this really epic first chapter in a massive generational conflict. And this conflict is really essential, I think, to understanding the lore and history of this world. They smartly incorporated some time jumps and cast changes as the younger characters were supposed to jump forward in time, grow up a bit. They structured the show in such a way that I thought it really did make all of the similarly named and looking characters easy enough to follow along with, which is a tall task, especially if you ask anyone who's read the book this is based on. One of my only criticisms is that I wish we got the younger Alicent and Rhaenyra actors for longer. As good as the adult actresses were, the younger ones were just as impressive. And on that similar note, some things did feel a tiny bit rushed to me, but nothing that really took me too far out of the storytelling. Really, though, not much negative to say. This was such an impressive feat in cross-generational storytelling, world building. Several excellent character and relationship dynamics are constantly on display in these really tense scenarios, almost one at the end of every episode. All beautifully shot too. Suffice it to say, I was very impressed by the show, and it really got me back into enjoying this universe, this world, as much as I was enjoying it when I first got hooked. Speaking of which, in second place, I'll put Game of Thrones Season 1. I still love this season. It is probably the most patient and faithful adaptation maybe that I've ever seen. Everything that's added here really helps to flesh out supporting characters. All of the acting is tremendous, even from the youngest cast members. I binged this season in one night, and if you haven't watched it in a while, I really encourage you to go back. We get so many unique things and characters this season that we don't really get much or any of in other seasons. For example, Viserys, King Robert, Ned Stark, Khal Drogo, Syrio Forel, and of course all the intrigue and mystery of Jon Arryn's death. While later seasons might have gotten a little more epic and grand, this one really has much more of the intimate, emotional, political conversations that I love. This has more of those types of scenes almost than any other season. I just think about the conversation between Robert and Cersei, kind of where they're talking about how loveless their marriage is. It's really brilliant stuff. Love this season. Season 1 easily comes in second place. And then in first place, I'm going to have to put Game of Thrones Season 2. I didn't binge this season in one night like I did with Season 1. However, I did watch like 5 episodes on a Saturday, and then the second half the next day. So pretty close, with just a little time to breathe and sleep on everything incredible I had just witnessed up to that point. I mean, really, first of all, just the expansion of world building we get here is incredible. So we keep the intimate political scenes from the first seasons, but now, for instance, we get Tywin more than we did in Season 1, and Charles Dance and Maisie Williams, they absolutely knock all of their scenes in Harrenhal out of the park. We get this great world building with the Baratheons, introducing Stannis, Davos, and Melisandre. We also continue to explore the Renly character. We get to know more about him and Loras. We meet Marjorie and Brienne. And then, of course, Catelyn's character goes through some excellent growth here as she accompanies her son in his war campaign. And then Jon goes north and he meets Ygritte up there. And then you have Theon, one of my favorite characters. He gets one of the grimmest and most fascinating character arcs. And of course, we can't forget about Tyrion and his brilliant scheming and politicking in King's Landing. All of that's building up carefully and patiently to this outstanding final 2 episodes. Other great things here. Even though most of Dany's story isn't too interesting, her final kind of dream sequence, and in particular when she sees Drogo and the baby, that always brings at least a tear or two to my eye. Something else, there's also that amazing tension between Cersei and Sansa, and of course Joffrey's descent into even more more cruelty, and outstanding season of television, and I have high hopes and expectations that our next few seasons of House of the Dragon could actually get back up to this same quality again. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. I guess we'll have to stay tuned. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and suggest or share my content with friends you think might also enjoy it. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one. Bye. Thanks.